Hello, I'm Adinser, and this is pretty much an addendum to the previous video, where I came to the conclusion that Warlords of Draenor is actually the worst expansion ever. So now I'm gonna share my thoughts on a few simple ideas that would bring WoW back on track. The most obvious thing that could help is more high quality content outside of raids. I would think that everyone agrees that the more things you can do, but not actually have to do, is better. So here are a few examples of that. This is quite the controversial topic since the daily quest debacle at the start of MoP. If you're not aware, people got burnt out by doing them every single day across almost all of the zones in Pandaria. And most of them were doing so not because they liked it, because it gave them because it was the only way to gain reputation, and reputation gave you the best PvE gear beside raiding, and it gave you access to recipes for the best crafted items. So if you were a serious or even a casual raider, to some extent, you had to do those quests. However, they quickly changed that and made all daily quests not mandatory. So by the time 5.2 came out, everyone was sick of dailies, and that's a real shame. The dailies in Isle of Thunder were so well put together. There weren't too many of them. Every day you could get different quests that sent you to different places on the island, and all of those places had some kind of buff that you could get and make the grind faster and more enjoyable. If you wanted to make it go even faster, you could form a group of 5, not just join a raid like you do today for the Apexis dailies and stay AFK while the raid does all the work. The whole server worked together to unlock the next daily hub that would give you more dailies to do and more rewards. And don't get me started on how awesome the treasure trove system was. I did those dailies every single day for a really long time and never got bored of them, for the reasons I mentioned. But there is one much more important reason. I was playing my class outside of a raid and PvP environment, and I enjoyed it. Garrison follower missions are the new dailies that give you all sorts of great rewards while you are AFK or doing something else. That greatly diminishes the fun of dailies for the sole reason that you aren't playing the actual game. It just feels more like a chore. The dailies in MoP, however, weren't perfect, and I can understand why people wanted them gone. But this substitution that we got is far worse. So as I said before, if you wanted to complete the dailies in MoP, you were encouraged, and in some cases you literally had to form groups, which is an integral part of an MMO. You could enjoy and get better at your class, and you felt like progressing with the entire server towards a common goal. Bring back those style of dailies like in the Isle of Thunder, even though they were grindy most of the time, or an improved version of them that are well integrated into the story and world of Draenor. In the previous video I mentioned that having a new race and or class in a new expansion is a WoW tradition. So by not having either, there is no flavor to the expansion and nothing to hook people in. And trust me, if you're new to WoW, classes can hook people in like nothing else. The most recent example of a class selling an expansion, at least for me, was when I saw the monk in action a few years ago. And don't be fooled, a lot of people will, if nothing else, try out the new class or race just to feel them out. And if they get pulled in, they will play WoW for a much longer time than with just making work orders every day in the garrison. So what they could do in 6.3 or 6.4 is introduce a new race, if not a class. If you did the Terok quest line in Spires of Arak, you would see that both the Outcast Terracoa models and the original ones have almost the same amount of animations as all of the other races you can play. In the quest line you actually play as both, So introducing both factions and player character models in a future patch wouldn't be hard to do, I imagine. Asymmetry in games was mostly done in old multiplayer first and third person shooters. Lately though, it has become a lot more popular in all sorts of games. Even WoW had asymmetry in vanilla. The factions were missing one class from their roster, that being paladins and shaman. Only Horde had shamans and only Alliance paladins. Also, every race had a different spell for priests, and maybe for other classes too, I really can't remember. And all the classes had their own quest lines for their unique abilities. But the kind of asymmetry I had in mind is on a bigger scale. Say that while you were raiding Orgrimmar, it was unavailable for all max level Horde characters to visit during the entire patch. Maybe your new capital city is Thunder Bluff, or a rebuilt abandoned one, or even a new one. Or maybe you just don't have a capital city, maybe you're a refugee of some sort. Or better yet, give people a choice between supporting Garrosh and taking him down. So all the players that chose taking Garrosh down were in good standing with the Alliance and could visit their cities. And all that supported Garrosh could stay in Orgrimmar, so they would be actively trying to sabotage other raiders from completing their goals. And that would be, I would guess, mostly the PvPers. In Warlords you could have a similar thing. Have one of the towns in Asheron be conquered by the opposing faction, and that faction then merges the two towns, making it a city. Then the battle line would be drawn between Asheron and Tanan Jungle, since it will be the new PvE zone in 6.2 anyway. There you can have the weaker faction just getting by with a scarcity of resources and some makeshift and small buildings, and the stronger one is attacking from the city. That would set up naval and coastal battles for PvP. And that way the story would move forward in a natural way, and the world would feel more alive. Also, as a side note, while we are on the topic of PvP, Anomalous had the idea of making Nagrand into a PvP zone where you could only form groups of 5 instead of forming raids and wrecking everything, or staying AFK. Complete anarchy would reign and there wouldn't be many objectives, just kill or be killed. And the incentive to do it wouldn't be a mandatory conquest cap like it is now, it would be cool new transmogs for gear and engines. Also, please balance the arena correctly for once, please. So seeing as they pretty much moved away from the idea of asymmetry between the factions, anything like that is unlikely to happen. If it would though, it could bring new life into the game and it would inspire people to try out the other faction just to see what the fuss is all about, like they did long ago with paladins and shamans. This is just a simple and fun thing that they could implement. Since we already have the Garrisons, why not integrate them into the raids and maybe world PvP in some way? I mean, think about it. Garrisons are the major focus of this expansion, and yet they don't improve the core gameplay in any way, just while leveling. So, in raids for example, you could have some insanely hard trash, and the only way to deal with it is to use insanely powerful and fun garrison abilities that are already in the game, or just make new ones. I know that this isn't a profound idea, but something this simple would kill the monotony in raids, and the fact that garrisons aren't relied upon for anything in the world is just mind-boggling. Difficulty is what most long-time players are dismissing the new expansions for, and for a good reason. If nothing else, the difficulty of leveling up in the latest content shouldn't be doable in a week, let alone a day. Just as a comparison, leveling from 90 to 100 can be done in the same time as you could level from 1 to 8 in vanilla. That's just insane, but since we are more than a half a year into the expansion, making the leveling more difficult wouldn't be viable. So that's a note for the next expansion. What would be viable though is making any new content that comes out a lot more difficult than it is now. Again, I'm not talking about raids in this video, so all the other content should be harder. This constatation is coming from the experience I recently had playing on a vanilla private server. Even though I played during vanilla, I was young at the time and I forgot how difficult leveling and everything else was. So after all this time, after 10 years, I was surprised to find out that the community in that game is like I remember it. Every single person that passes you by that can help you in any way, they do. If they have a buff, they give it to you. If they see that you are on low HP, they heal you or just help you kill the mob. And they do it because they know how hard it is to kill 2 or even a single mob as most classes. Also, there are a lot of group quests that literally have to be done as a group of 4 minimum. Then we have the general chat. It's alive 24/7 and it offers help to people that need it. Again, mostly because everyone knows how hard it is to find something related to a quest or in a city, or to choose a viable talent or spec tree. And I have seen higher level people just helping out the lower level ones. So difficulty is and always was one of the most important topics in WoW. Back then, the difficulty made everything so much more rewarding, exciting, and ultimately more fun. It didn't and still doesn't matter that it's grindy as hell. The grind is what you remember fondly, or should I say the end of the grind and the satisfaction afterwards. So in terms of leveling, currently I would say leave the 1 to 90 or in future 1 to 100 the same as it is now, but the next 10 or 5 levels should be a little bit easier than vanilla and TPC, but only a little bit, and all the new improvements they added to the game would accomplish that. And the reason I'm talking about leveling so much and the difficulty of it is because the same logic applies to everything else, including raiding, dailies, dungeons, challenge mode dungeons, acquiring gear in the world, maybe from world bosses or legendary quest lines. And what would actually make the legendary quest line better is making it more difficult, not more grindy. Instead of the gather 1000 of this and 500 of that, you could have a skill test, skill challenge that not everyone could accomplish right away. So I would say that a combination of vanilla and TPC difficulty with all of the improvements they added to the game over the last 8 years would make WoW a much enjoyable game than it is now. These are all ideas that can easily be implemented into the game, and if you're still watching, I hope that you agree. Also, there are a lot more ideas like this and better ones that people thought of over the years, but the problem is no one listened. So let's start a discussion in the comments, and maybe, just maybe, this video gets popular enough and has enough good ideas in the comment section and in the video itself so that Blizz takes an interest. Thanks for watching and see you next time.